Welcome everyone to EquipNet 2021. It's good to be with you again this year, even if it's only by a video presentation. Today's topic that I'll be covering is your finances during COVID. If you haven't recognized my voice by now, my name is Mike DeMeo. I'm the Executive Director at New Focus, New Jersey, and also a personal budget coach. I believe this is my 13th year at EquipNet. So today's agenda for this presentation is why start now? Why budget now? We're in a pandemic. Where do I start? If you do think it is time to get started with budgeting, building the basic household budget, looking at the question of how much spending is too much spending, and lastly, how do I get my budget to balance? Let's look at the first question. Why start now? Well, budgeting is usually one of the three top New Year's resolutions. It usually contends with weight loss and whatever else is occupying the country at that particular time. I'm not sure we're number one anymore. Weight loss seems to have kicked up and taken the number one position over the last couple of years, but I think budgeting is still in the top three. Hopefully the holiday buying season is over, so things are calm now for a little bit of time. Maybe the credit card bills from the holidays are still hitting, but it's still a good time to get started to deal with them. We're looking at the pandemic, and it looks like, hopefully, we're starting to see some signs that the pandemic is relenting. So we might be going back to what we call that normal way of life. Hopefully by mid-year, many will be vaccinated and life will be returning to the way it was before the pandemic started. It's always good to keep from accumulating new debt, especially paying those high credit card bills from the holidays. So it's a good time to start now just for that. For those of you who are considering going to a financial planner, budgeting is a foundational item for retirement. Financial planners look at your budget to measure your lifestyle and project how you're going to fund your lifestyle during the retirement years. They're also looking for any disposable income that you have now that you can invest in a sound retirement plan. And budgeting has really become, over the past several years, the new normal, with paychecks kind of flat and expenses still on the increase. A lot of us really need to take the time to budget in order to make ends meet. It's also the new normal because a plan beats a panic. I've had this slide in my slide deck for 10 years now from Jane Bryant Quinn, and I think it's still appropriate every year that I take a review of this presentation. It's really now a priority to look at income versus expenses first, and then make your investment considerations next. We also need to look at what will 2021 bring. We've just had a presidential election. We've got a new president in the Oval Office. What's that going to mean to the economy and to the country? What about volatile markets and volatility in the markets? The stock market still seems strong, but who knows what 2021 might bring to the market. How about in your personal household? Are there any transitions that are planned for your household? Do you have a new job? Is there a new family or a new household member on the way? Some of us have COVID puppies. I don't know if that qualifies as a household member, but I'll tell you, it sure does hit your budget. And how about a move? Are you planning to move your household to a different location? So check your transitions and see if they're covered with your current budget plan. How about your savings? Are your savings enough to cover the current issues and the known transitional issues? And it's time to check your debt and expenses too. Your income and expenses need to be in balance with the overall budget. And it's probably time to look at the impact of the debt on your overall budget. The median income has pretty much been stagnant or lower for a lot of people. So keep that in mind when you're looking at the budget. And also, what about the issue of the emergency fund? Do you have enough funds to cover an emergency? Typically, $1,000 or more will cover you for for most household emergencies. So take a look at your emergency fund as well. But you say, Mike, it's a pandemic. Why should I be doing this now? Well, the pandemic has shifted three major expense categories for most: groceries, eating out, and gasoline. And there's been others too. I'll show you that on the upcoming budget template that I have highlighted for where expenses have shifted during this pandemic. So with the vaccine becoming more available and life possibly going back to what we used to remember as normal, you may see some of these expenses shifting back to the way things were back in 2019, maybe even as early as this spring, which when you're viewing this is probably going to be very close, as EquipNet is 2 days before the official start of the spring season. So take a look at your budget and take a look at what shifts have happened since the pandemic and start to prepare for how the pandemic relenting may shift those expenses back to what you are used to dealing with. And this just might be your 2021 wake-up call. It's time to make sure that you're saving enough. Again, watch for those shifting expenses that might be shifting around as the pandemic eases. Try to reduce or eliminate debt as best you can and keep debt from being a factor on your budget. It's always time to build those emergency resources. Take a look at that, and maybe if you are getting a tax refund, you may be able to put some of those resources into an emergency fund. And also, it's always time to save more for retirement or education needs for those of you who have family members who are going back to school and are needing to pay some of your educational bills. So is this your 2021 wake-up call? Maybe yes, maybe no. If so, take heed and let's move forward. So if you believe that this is a good time to get started, then the first question is, where do I start? Well, I always start by writing down what you'd like to accomplish, typically with your goals first, and then your written budget. You will be surprised at the power of a written budget for yourself and for members of your household. Reducing to writing helps to see what needs need to be taken care of. And it also helps us to get started. And that's why I have it here on where do I start. Use a budget template. You can get one from New Focus New Jersey website. You'll see that on the budget template when I show it to you, www.newfocusnj.org. Or check the internet if you see a budget that you would prefer other than the one that I have. Take a look, get a template to help you get started, and don't spend a lot of time reinventing the wheel when so many resources are already available to you. Number 3 here, it's time to investigate sources and courses. Many books address the topic of budgeting. Even more online resources address this topic. I'm sure you could spend an hour just looking at all of the different resources, trying to decide which ones might be most in line with your beliefs and your needs about budgeting. Mint.com seems to be a favorite of many of my clients when it comes to automating your budget. So maybe you could take a look at Mint.com and see if that's one that might help you with your budgeting needs. When you are putting your budget together for the household, be sure that the household is in alignment with any of your budget plans. If you have multiple members in your household, that probably means you're going to have multiple opinions on how to get started with budgeting and how to move forward. So there's going to be a lot of good ideas in your budget to help you get started, and make sure all of those good ideas are in alignment, so everybody's pulling together in the same direction. Look at tracking expenses to make sure that your spending is in line with the plan. Just don't say where you want your money to go. Track your expenses and make sure that your money is actually going where you told it to go. You might want to use 2020 history as a start. If you have your 2020 spending available, that may be a good place to look. Maybe even 2019 if you have that history available in one of those quote unquote more normal years. But in any case, either track your expenses going forward or look at some of the history of your expenses to help get started. So what are some solutions to getting started with your budgeting? Well, budget. Number one, keep your budget current with the changing time. Different years bring different financial objectives. Budgets can differ by month too, or at least by season. So be aware of your budget in the changing times and try to keep it current. If you are making budget changes, it's time to look at some of the underlying issues behind what those changes might bring. There are behavioral issues that are driving a lot of the spending categories. Many of them are emotional issues, not math issues. And when it comes to emotional issues with budgeting, we're probably looking at some members of the family having to change some of their spending habits. The math is relatively simple when it comes to budgeting, usually basic addition and subtraction, and maybe some percentages if your budget is really sophisticated. Look at reducing or eliminating debt. Again, minimize the issue of debt on your monthly expenses. If credit is an issue, get your free annual credit report and clear up any mistakes that may be keeping your score down erroneously. Many people, when they look at their credit report, they do see that there are mistakes out there on the credit report. Take action now. It's still a relatively new year. So new year, new start, time to get moving. And the last bullet here is if you need help, get help. Find good counsel. There are many places and people who will be willing to help you. Take advantage of the resources available. There may be people in your church or in your community who may be good at this and be willing to help you when it comes to getting started with your budget. So, why a budget, you may be asking? Let's just review a little bit and look at what a purpose of a budget is. A budget is really in place to define your income and expenses. It detects problem areas or spending categories that might be causing your entire budget to be out of balance. Your budget provides a written plan for spending and for savings. In fact, sometimes we refer to the budget as a spending plan. A lot of people feel that the term budget is too restrictive and they don't like it because it may convey the wrong attitude toward your finances. So look at your budget as a spending plan. Here's the money I have to plan, I'm planning to spend this month, and here's my plan on how I'm going to spend it. A budget will aid in accountability and communication about spending across all of the household members, and a written budget will make it clear where spending is taking place and help you to identify where changes might be necessary. And a budget will help you to schedule the flow of money in and out of the home based on when you get your paychecks and when bills are due. So take a look and see if any of these purposes of a budget are ones that might help you. I promised to show you what a written budget would look like. This is half of what a budget looks like. The budget template lends itself to more clarity on a portrait view rather than landscape. I'll show you the bottom of the budget after I go through this slide. This is the budget that you'll get if you go to New Focus, New Jersey to see what budget I offer you. And it is on Excel, so it actually does the math for you. The purpose of this budget is to show the different categories of spending. Of course, in the upper left, it shows the income and giving and money that we actually have available to spend. When we get to the second page in the lower right, you'll see the bottom line of the budget. You'll see the budget is broken into categories. I didn't skip categories 5 through 7. They will show up on the bottom half, and also 13 to the bottom line. I've highlighted a lot of expense items here because these are the ones that I've seen with my clients that have changed during a pandemic. First off, looking at category 4 with food, many people have been going to the grocery stores more because their favorite restaurants or eating establishments have been closed in 2020 and they've been forced to eat more at home. So the food line has actually increased with the budget, and then correspondingly, because those restaurants are closed, the eating out spending for the budget has probably declined from what we're used to having because, again, our restaurants and eating places aren't as easily accessible as they used to be. Also, in the entertainment and recreation area, you'll see that vacations have been a category that have been very hard hit with the 2020 pandemic. A lot of people are not flying on airplanes because they feel that it's an unsafe way to travel with so many people in the cabin possibly having the COVID virus. So vacations may have been changed or actually eliminated from 2020 because of the pandemic. As a result, a lot of people have seen a little bit of extra money on their bottom line and have put that money into category 10, savings. They've saved more because there's more money to save. And a lot of their expenses, they can't really spend as much because the activities are just not as available as they used to be. If you look at category 12, you'll see beauty and barber is another category that I've highlighted. I've got my 20 and 2021 haircut here. I haven't been to a barber shop all year in 2020, and it looks like it's going to be a while before I get there again. So my wife has been doing a lot of my hair cutting. She told me I should have gotten my hair cut for this presentation, but onward we trudged anyway. So you may have decreased expenses when it comes to the beauty shop or the barber shop. Same thing with allowances and lunches. If you can't go out to lunch as much, you may be seeing some savings in allowances and lunches. And I did briefly mention some people, like myself, have gotten a COVID puppy or a pet to help them with the pandemic. I know a lot of animal shelters have been low on supply of the animals that they have to bring to your household because many people have adopted pets this year as something to do with themselves with the pandemic. So if you have gotten one, like us, you've noticed that the food and pet supplies have gone up in your budget, and you probably need to budget for that. Ours was a new puppy, so he had to get all of his shots, and we spent some considerable money, obviously money that we've never spent before, on going to the veterinarian. And so I've labeled this category Pets and Vets as a category to look at if you do have a COVID puppy or a new COVID pet in your household. Here is the bottom half of the budget that I promised to show you. Over in the transportation category, number 5, gas and oil and even car insurance may have gone down because a lot of us are not traveling to work anymore. Some of the insurance companies have actually given us some insurance rebates. So our insurance payments may have gone down in 2020. Look for possible rebates in 2021, or if the population really starts going back to the office, those rebates may be at an end. Because of the reduced travel, we've spent a lot less on gas and oil, and gasoline prices have gone down considerably in 2020. We've seen the recent spike in 2021, so keep an eye on your current budget to reflect any changes in gasoline prices. When it comes to school and childcare, Since the kids are home from school and schools were closed, a lot of people have saved a lot of money on daycare. So if you're one of those people who've saved some money, that's more money you might be able to put towards savings. But be careful when schools and businesses do reopen. You may have daycare expenses starting to go back to where they were back before the pandemic started. As I mentioned earlier, in the bottom right, we have our bottom line. We take our spendable income, subtract total expenses, and there we have our surplus, deficit, or zero if you have a perfectly balanced budget. More on that later. In the lower left, I do have my website here. If you want to get a copy of the budget template, go to my website, type in budget template into the search box, and a template very similar to the one that you see on your screen will be available to you. Again, it's in Excel, and it will do the math for you.